Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. Today, we're traveling through time to explore the incredible legacy of southern kingdoms that flourished in India between 300 and 1500 CE.
A fascinating period.
It really is. It's like looking for those ripples in a pond long after the stone is sunk.
Yeah.
How are these kingdoms' achievements still visible in modern South India?
Well, it's incredible how these kingdoms, weren't just flashes in the pan. They really did lay the groundwork for so much of what we see in South India today. I mean, from intricate temple architecture to the languages people speak, and even deeply rooted social customs.
So we're not just talking about dusty history books here.
Right.
We're talking about living legacies.
Exactly.
Where should we even begin to untangle this web of influence?
Let's start with something tangible. Architecture.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, the Jahangiri Mandir at Orchha.
Okay.
Now, you might be thinking, wait, Jahangiri, isn't that a Mughal name? And you'd be right. But here's the twist. This temple was actually commissioned by a Hindu Raja, Bir Singh Deo, during the Mughal period.
So right off the bat, we're seeing this blending of cultures, huh?
Yeah.
Was it a peaceful exchange of ideas or more of a power dynamic at play?
Well, the Mughal Empire was expanding its reach during this period, and sometimes that involved conquest. But it wasn't a simple case of one culture completely overrating another. There was a lot of cultural exchange and adaptation happening. In the case of the Jahangiri Mandir, Bir Singh Deo incorporated elements of Mughal palaces into the temple's design, but the structure itself and its decorations still celebrate Hindu lore.
So it's like he was saying, we can appreciate your aesthetics while still holding on to our own identity.
Right.
I'm picturing these grand Mughal-inspired arches and maybe some of those delicate jolly screens, but then adorned with scenes from Hindu epics. Is that on the right track?
Exactly. It's this fusion of styles that makes the Jahangiri Mandir so unique. And it wasn't a one-off phenomenon. Think about the regional terracotta temples of Bengal. They're deeply rooted in Hindu traditions, but if you look closely, you'll notice subtle influences from Islamic architectural styles as well.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So even in something as seemingly straightforward as building materials and techniques, we're seeing these cultural streams intermingling.
Yeah.
Were these influences primarily coming from the Mughal Empire, or were there other players in this architectural exchange?
The Mughals were a major force, but remember, the southern kingdoms had extensive trade networks that connected them to all sorts of places. Southeast Asia, the Middle East, even as far as the Roman Empire. These interactions exposed them to diverse architectural ideas that they absorbed and adapted to their own needs and aesthetics. It was a true melting pot of creativity.
Okay, so it's not just about individual buildings standing as monuments to the past.
Right.
It's about understanding how these architectural exchanges shaped the entire landscape of South India.
Precisely. And the Ayodhya Mosque, built in the 16th century, offers another fascinating glimpse into this cultural interplay.
Okay.
The mosque was built by a Mughal noble, but he incorporated black stone columns taken from a pre-existing temple into its structure.
Whoa, repurposed temple columns in a mosque. That's a pretty powerful symbol of the shifting power dynamics and cultural adaptations happening at that time. What message do you think the builder was trying to convey by doing that?
It's difficult to say for certain, but it's certainly a detail that sparks curiosity. It could have been a display of dominance, a way of asserting Islamic authority by incorporating elements of a conquered religion, or perhaps it was a more pragmatic decision, simply using readily available materials. Or maybe it was a gesture of syncretism, an attempt to blend the two faiths in a symbolic way.
Each possibility paints a completely different picture of the cultural climate. This is why I love deep dives like this. We're not just learning facts, we're getting these fascinating glimpses into the complexities of history.
Exactly. And that complexity is reflected in the diversity of architectural styles we see across South India today. Temples and mosques often stand side by side, each bearing the marks of centuries of cultural exchange and innovation. It's all woven into the very fabric of the region's urban spaces.
It's like we're walking through a living museum, seeing these echoes of the past all around us. We've been focusing on the blending of Hindu and Islamic architectural styles, but I imagine there's a whole other story to be told about the unique features of South Indian temple architecture.
You're absolutely right. South Indian temples have a distinct architectural vocabulary, from towering gopurams to intricate mandapas, all reflecting centuries of development and artistic refinement.
Okay, I'm definitely adding South Indian temple architecture to my list of things to explore further.
Good idea.
So far, we've seen how these southern kingdoms left their mark on the physical landscape. But what about their influence on social customs? How did they shape the way people live and interact in South India today?
One of the most profound legacies is the concept of ahimsa, which means nonviolence. This principle is deeply rooted in ancient Indian thought, particularly in Jainism and some schools of Hinduism, but its impact extends far beyond religious practice.
I've heard of ahimsa. It's all about respecting all forms of life, right?
Yes.
But how did this ancient concept shape social customs in a practical way?
Well, ahimsa has influenced everything from dietary choices to social justice movements in India. Vegetarianism, for example, is widespread in South India, partly due to the emphasis on nonviolence towards animals.
Huh.
The concept of ahimsa has also inspired various forms of activism, promoting peaceful resistance and advocating for the rights of marginalized communities.
It's amazing how this idea from centuries ago is still so relevant and influential today. It's like these kingdoms planted a seed of compassion that's continued to blossom through generations. Speaking of things that have stood the test of time, what about language? How did these southern kingdoms shape the way people communicate in South India today?
To understand that, we need to talk about Sanskrit. Now, Sanskrit wasn't a language spoken by everyday people during this period, but it held immense prestige as the language of religious texts, literature, and scholarship. Think of it as the Latin of ancient India.
So kind of like how Latin influenced the development of Romance languages in Europe.
Exactly. Sanskrit played a similar role in shaping the development of regional languages in South India. Through a process of translation and adaptation, Sanskrit vocabulary and grammatical structures found their way into local languages like Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, and Malayalam. This led to the emergence of unique literary traditions and enriched the linguistic tapestry of the region.
It's like Sanskrit provided the foundation, and then these regional languages built upon it, creating their own unique flavors and expressions. It's incredible to think about the long journey of words and how they connect us to the past.
Absolutely. And the linguistic diversity we see in South India today is a testament to the creativity and resilience of those historical interactions. Each language tells a story, and each story adds a thread to the rich cultural tapestry of the region.
It sounds like we've just scratched the surface of these kingdoms' influence.
Yeah.
We've talked about architecture, social customs, and language, but I'm sure there's so much more to explore.
You're right. Their impact on art, music, dance, literature, it's all part of this incredible legacy that continues to shape South India today.
Well, I'm ready to dive deeper into this fascinating world.
All right.
What should we explore next?
Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about something that might surprise you. The Mughal Empire's architectural influence on South India.
Okay.
You might be thinking, wait, weren't the Mughals based in North India? And you'd be right.
Yeah.
But their reach extended far and wide, and their architectural style left a lasting impact on the entire subcontinent.
Okay, I'm intrigued. I know the Mughals were known for their grand buildings, but what specifically makes their architecture stand out?
Well, one of the hallmarks of Mughal architecture is its sophisticated use of geometrical proportion. They were masters of symmetry and balance, creating these incredibly harmonious spaces.
I see.
Take Humayun's tomb in Delhi, for example. It's a masterpiece of Mughal design, and one of its key features is its nine-bayed plan.
Nine-bayed plan.
Yeah, imagine a square divided into 9 equal squares, like a tic-tac-toe board.
Okay.
That's essentially a nine-bayed plan. It's a structural concept that creates a sense of spaciousness and grandeur, and it was used in various Mughal buildings, including mosques and palaces.
So this nine-bayed plan, did the Mughals invent it?
Actually, they inherited it from their ancestors, the Timurids, a Central Asian dynasty known for their impressive architectural achievements. The Mughals were descendants of the Timurids, so it's like they carried this architectural DNA with them to India.
That's fascinating. So those iconic Mughal buildings we often see in pictures, they're actually carrying echoes of their Central Asian heritage.
Absolutely, and it goes beyond just the layout. The Timurids and Mughals also shared a fascination with incorporating symbolism into their architecture. Both dynasties often used the concept of the 8 levels of paradise in their mausoleums,
Oh, wow.
representing the different levels of heaven described in Islamic cosmology. They weren't just building tombs, they were creating gateways to the afterlife.
Talk about weaving spiritual depth into architecture. I'm starting to see how these architectural ideas could have spread even to southern kingdoms. Was it primarily through conquest, or were there other avenues of cultural exchange happening?
It was a complex interplay of factors. Sometimes, yes, the spread of Mughal influence was tied to military campaigns, but there were also more peaceful avenues of cultural transmission. Royal marriages, for instance, often involved the exchange of artists, architects, and ideas. Remember, the Mughal court was known for its patronage of the arts and attracted talent from all over the subcontinent.
Right, so it wasn't just about imposing a dominant culture, but also about this fascinating cross-pollination of ideas and aesthetics. How do we see this reflected in Southern Kingdom's architecture? Were they simply copying Mughal styles or adapting them in their own unique ways?
They were masters of adaptation. Take the Jahangiri Mandir we discussed earlier.
Right.
While it incorporates Mughal elements, it does so in a way that harmonizes with the temple's overall Hindu character. It's a fusion, not a replication.
It's like they were taking inspiration from Mughal grandeur and reinterpreting it through their own cultural lens. What about gardens and palaces? Did the Mughals influence those as well?
Absolutely. The Mughals were obsessed with gardens, and for good reason. They believed gardens were earthly representations of paradise, offering a glimpse into the beauty and serenity of the afterlife. One of their favorite garden designs was the charbagh.
Okay.
It's a formal garden divided into 4 quadrants by waterways or pathways, often with a pavilion or tomb at the center.
Okay, I've definitely seen pictures of those. They're stunning.
Yeah.
Those perfectly manicured lawns, the intricate patterns, the reflecting pools, it's like stepping into a fairy tale. But how did this Mughal garden style make its way to South India?
Well, it all started with Babur, the founder of the Mughal dynasty. He was smitten with the charbagh gardens he encountered in Herat, a Timurid city known for its beauty. When he conquered India, he brought that love of gardens with him, commissioning the construction of similar gardens in his new domain.
So it's like he was trying to create a little piece of Central Asian paradise in India.
Yeah.
And did this charbagh style catch on in southern kingdoms as well?
Yes, to some extent. While southern kingdoms had their own unique garden traditions, the Mughal influence is evident in some later gardens, particularly those associated with royal palaces.
It makes sense that royalty would be drawn to the opulence and symbolism of Mughal gardens.
Speaking of palaces, were there any standout palaces in southern kingdoms that we should know about? One that comes to mind is not in a southern kingdom, but built by a Mughal emperor. Fatehpur Sikri, built by Akbar, is a breathtaking example of Mughal architectural ingenuity. It's a vast complex of palaces, mosques, and public buildings, all meticulously planned and executed.
I've heard of Fatehpur Sikri. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, right?
Yes, it's remarkably well preserved, and it offers incredible insights into Akbar's reign and the architectural trends of the time. One thing that makes Fatehpur Sikri particularly fascinating is that it blends Timurid and Indian architectural elements in innovative ways.
So we're seeing those Timurid genes expressing themselves once again, but this time with an Indian twist. What were some of the unique features that set Fatehpur Sikri apart?
One intriguing detail is that some of the palace spaces have a sort of functional ambiguity. They weren't strictly designed for a single purpose, but could be adapted for various court ceremonies and gatherings. This reflects the fluidity of Akbar's court and his emphasis on inclusivity and cultural exchange.
It's like they were designing spaces for adaptability and dialogue, which seems fitting for a ruler known for his openness to different faiths and cultures.
Exactly. Akbar was a visionary leader who recognized the power of cultural exchange. He wasn't just building a palace. He was creating a space where different traditions could meet and interact. And that spirit of cultural fusion is something we see reflected in the architecture of South India as well.
Okay, I'm definitely adding Fatehpur Sikri to my travel bucket list. We've covered gardens and palaces, but what about religious architecture? Did the Mughals make their mark on mosques and temples in South India?
Absolutely. Mosques in particular played a significant role in showcasing the architectural prowess of both the Mughals and southern kingdoms. And like we've seen with other architectural styles, there was a lot of cross-pollination of ideas happening.
I'm all ears. Tell me about some of these impressive mosques that showcase this blending of styles.
Well, there's the Jamek Mosque in Thada, built during Shah Jahan's reign. It's a stunning example of Timurid-inspired brick construction with intricate tile work that'll take your breath away.
Wait, brick and tile. That sounds so different from the grand marble structures we often associate with Mughal architecture.
It is. And that's what makes it so unique. It shows the diversity of Mughal architectural styles, their willingness to experiment with different materials and techniques. And the Jahangiri Mosque's stunning tile work is a testament to the skill of artisans from Sindh, the region where Athlata is located.
So it's not just a blend of Timurid and Mughal influences, but also a celebration of regional craftsmanship.
Exactly. And this Jahangiri Mosque, built in the 17th century, showcases a fusion of architectural traditions and artistic styles.
It's like each mosque tells a story about the cultural landscape of its time. Are there any other mosques that we should add to our must-see list?
There are so many. But if we're talking about iconic mosques that showcase the grandeur of Mughal architecture, we can't forget the Jama Masjid in Delhi. It was commissioned by Shah Jahan, the same emperor who built the Taj Mahal, and it's one of the largest mosques in India.
Oh, wow. If it's anything like the Taj Mahal, it must be absolutely breathtaking.
It is. The Jama Masjid is a masterpiece of Mughal design, with towering minarets, expansive courtyards, and intricate marble work. It's a symbol of Mughal power and artistry, and it continues to be a major center of religious and cultural life in Delhi.
Okay, I'm officially adding the Jama Masjid to my ever-growing travel bucket list.
It's a must-see.
It's amazing how we've journeyed from the 9 plans of Timurid tombs to the intricate tile work of the Jahangiri Mosque and the grandeur of the Jama Masjid. It's like we've been on a whirlwind tour of Mughal architectural history.
And we've only just begun to explore the architectural riches of South India.
Oh!
There's so much more to discover, from the rock-cut temples of the Pallavas to the towering Gopurams of Chola temples. Each dynasty, each region, each era added its own unique chapter to this architectural saga.
It sounds like we could spend a lifetime exploring the architectural wonders of South India and still only scratch the surface. But before we get completely lost in the world of arches and domes, I'm curious to hear more about those pre-existing temple columns that were incorporated into the Ayodhya Mosque.
Ah, yes. That detail is a fascinating window into the complexities of cultural interaction during the Mughal period.
Yeah.
Let's delve into that and uncover the stories those columns might tell.
Perfect. Because those stories, those glimpses into the past, are what make history so captivating. Okay, so let's rewind a bit and go back to that intriguing detail about the Ayodhya Mosque incorporating pre-existing temple columns.
Right.
It sounds like a tangible piece of history with multiple layers of meaning.
It is. Imagine walking into a mosque and seeing these intricately carved columns that clearly belong to an earlier Hindu temple. It immediately raises questions about the circumstances of their inclusion, the intentions of the builder, and the broader context of cultural interaction during that period.
Exactly. It's like those columns are whispering stories about the past. Yeah. What are some possible interpretations of their presence in the mosque?
Well, one interpretation is that it was a deliberate act of dominance, a way for the Mughal rulers to assert their authority over the conquered territory. By incorporating elements of the previous religious structure, they were symbolically subsuming the old order into the new.
It's like saying, we're in charge now, and even your sacred spaces will serve our purpose.
Right.
It definitely suggests a power dynamic at play.
Right. But it's not the only interpretation. Some scholars suggest it might have been a more pragmatic decision.
Okay.
Perhaps the builders simply saw those columns as readily available, high-quality building materials and chose to incorporate them for practical reasons rather than symbolic ones.
So it could have been a matter of convenience or efficiency rather than a deliberate statement of power. It makes me think about how history is often a mix of grand narratives and everyday practicalities.
Exactly. And there's a third interpretation that adds another layer of complexity. Some scholars believe that incorporating elements from different religious traditions was a way of fostering a sense of unity and syncretism, a blending of faiths.
So instead of a display of dominance, it could have been an attempt at cultural bridge building.
Yeah.
It definitely complicates the narrative.
It does, and it highlights the challenges of interpreting historical events.
Yeah.
We often have to piece together fragments of evidence and consider multiple perspectives to get a sense of what might have transpired. In this case, those repurposed temple columns offer a tantalizing glimpse into the complex cultural dynamics of the Mughal period.
It makes me wonder if those columns were incorporated with reverence or if it was seen as a desecration of a sacred space. Were the Hindu residents of Ayodhya consulted in this decision?
Yeah.
Or was it imposed upon them?
Those are all excellent questions, and unfortunately, we don't have definitive answers. Historical records often leave gaps, and we're left to speculate and analyze based on the available evidence. That's part of what makes history so intriguing, though. It's an ongoing conversation, a constant process of questioning and interpretation.
It's like a detective story where we're trying to piece together clues from the past.
Yeah,
And sometimes those clues lead to more questions than answers. But it's that process of exploration that makes it so fascinating.
absolutely. And it reminds us that history isn't just a collection of facts and dates. It's a tapestry woven from diverse perspectives, interpretations, and narratives.
We've talked a lot about architecture, but I know these southern kingdoms were also known for their contributions to art, literature, and music.
Right.
Can you tell me a bit about those aspects of their legacy?
Absolutely. In the realm of art, the bronze sculptures produced during the Chola period, which lasted from the 9th to the 13th centuries, are considered masterpieces of Indian art. These sculptures, often depicting Hindu deities, are renowned for their exquisite detail, graceful forms, and the technical skill required to cast them using the lost wax method.
I've seen pictures of those Chola bronzes. They're incredibly lifelike and expressive.
Yeah,
It's amazing to think about the level of artistry involved in creating them.
it is. And they weren't just beautiful objects, they were also infused with religious significance. They were used in temple rituals, and people believed they embodied the divine presence of the deities they represented.
So they were works of art and objects of devotion, a beautiful blend of aesthetics and spirituality.
Exactly. And that connection between art and spirituality is something we see across various art forms in South India.
You're right.
The intricate carvings that adorn temples, the colorful murals depicting scenes from epics and mythology, the elaborate costumes and gestures of classical dance forms, it's all interwoven with a sense of the sacred.
It sounds like every artistic expression was infused with deeper meaning. Were there any specific literary works or musical traditions that emerged from these southern kingdoms that we should know about?
The Sangam literature of the Tamil language is a treasure trove of ancient poems and texts that provide valuable insights into the social, cultural, and political life of the early centuries CE. These works cover a wide range of themes, from love and heroism to war and governance, offering a glimpse into the worldviews and values of that era.
It's like we're getting a first-hand account of life in ancient South India through the words of those who lived it.
Exactly. And in music, the Carnatic tradition, which developed primarily in South India, is one of the two major classical music systems of India, the other being Hindustani music.
Right.
Carnatic music is known for its intricate melodic structure, rhythmic complexity, and improvisational elements.
I'm more familiar with Hindustani music, but I've heard Carnatic music described as incredibly soulful and moving.
It is. And like other art forms in South India, it's deeply intertwined with religious and spiritual themes. Many Carnatic compositions are devotional songs praising Hindu deities or exploring philosophical concepts.
It seems like every aspect of life in these southern kingdoms was infused with art, music, and spirituality. It's a beautiful legacy that continues to resonate today.
It is. And it's a reminder that these kingdoms weren't just centers of political power. They were also vibrant cultural hubs that nurtured creativity, innovation, and artistic expression.
As we wrap up this deep dive, it feels like we've barely scratched the surface of this vast and fascinating topic.
Yeah.
It's clear that the legacy of these southern kingdoms is woven into the very fabric of South India today, from its architecture and languages to its social customs, art, music, and spiritual traditions.
You've hit the nail on the head. It's a legacy that continues to inspire and influence people's lives in countless ways.
So for our listener who's been on this journey with us, what's one thought-provoking question they can ponder as they continue to explore this topic?
How do these enduring legacies shape the way people in South India experience their own identity and connect with their cultural heritage today?
That's a great one. It's an invitation to think about how the past shapes the present and how those connections continue to inform our understanding of who we are.
Exactly. And it encourages us to approach history not just as a collection of facts, but as a living, breathing tapestry that continues to unfold around us.
Well, on that note, it's time to bring this episode to a close. But as always, the conversation doesn't end here. We encourage our listener to keep diving deep, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep discovering the fascinating connections that bind us to the past. Until next time, keep diving deep.